The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Our guests today are authors Meredith Brokaw and Annie Gilbar. They've written the Penny Whistle Guide to Traveling with Children. They'll be talking with Children's Services librarian Nan Nystrom-Hilk about ways to make family vacations truly fun experiences for children and parents.
Welcome, Meredith Brokaw and Annie Gilbar, co-authors of the Penny Whistle Traveling with Kids book, which I just read while I was on my own vacation with kids, and I thought, oh, to have had this 15 years ago when I started traveling with my children. But I think first I'd like to just have you go over what are the real key things that make a vacation with kids work.
I think, Nan, that the first and maybe more important than anything else that guided us in writing the book was that you have to plan, and you have to plan according to your children's ages. And you also have to keep in mind that a family vacation is not like a vacation that you would plan for yourself singly or as a couple. It is simply a different vacation, and when you say a family vacation, it implies that you've got children and that they must come first. Because if your children are not happy, or if you've chosen inappropriately a destination, if they're cranky and frustrated, you're going to be cranky and frustrated. So number one, keep in mind the ages of the children when planning your vacation, and keep them in mind all throughout. They have to come first. And secondly, the planning. It's all in the planning.
What's really wonderful about planning a vacation with children is when you get them involved in the very beginning in the process, they become sort of invested in it, you know, and they have a stake in what's going to happen. It's important to know what your children like. If you have a boy or girl that really loves sports, it's not a good idea to plan a vacation around the ballet, you know. I mean, you have to really know what it is they love to do, and that's going to make them happy. So even if you are intent on taking them to a museum one day or half a day, the idea is to take them for an hour or so, let them see what they can get out of it, and then just go do something that you're more flexible at and something they really love to do. So when they're in on the planning in the very beginning, you can sort of prepare yourself and the kids for what's going to happen.
A democratic process. Does everybody, at least at my house, we all sit down and decide, what do I really want to do? And then we take turns, because you don't always get to do everything you want. But if everybody gets a chance to have something they want to do and know it's coming, it helps.
And if they have the choice in it, then they really feel like they had some sort of power over what it is that they're going to do. So you don't just go somewhere and they feel like they have to be there, but they want to be there.
Exactly, and I think some preparation, which you mentioned in your book too, makes a big difference when you get there.
Well, unfortunately, I think many of us have seen examples and maybe even gotten caught in the trap ourselves of having chosen the wrong vacation for our families at a particular time. And I'm thinking particularly of those families that I've seen standing in long lines at the amusement parks or the theme parks. They're so excited, particularly young parents who have just had a baby and they can hardly wait for the baby to get old enough so that they can go to Disney World. And unfortunately, a child in a stroller is very difficult to, it's just too young to understand what's going on, and the parent is stuck in long lines behind a stroller trying to keep everybody happy. The child really doesn't know what he's looking at. You know, how much better to have saved the money, because it's an expensive trip, to have saved the money and to have waited for a couple of years, at least until the children are all ambulatory. I think everybody has to be able to walk on their own before a trip to a place like that pays off.
When you have little kids like that, the really smart idea is to maybe start off with shorter trips and not necessarily a destination. You know, go for a cart trip for 2 or 3 hours to somewhere that's not so far away, and that means you can stop very often. You can get out and play a game or run around a little bit so your kids' energies are dissipated. And then you get back in the car, and then you can play some games or sing some songs and stop again. And that way your child gets acclimated to actually being away on a trip when they're that young.
You mentioned about singing songs and some of the things to do in the car, and that's one of the real valuable things in the book is lots of good games. And what I like best is it didn't cost a whole bunch of money to get them, and it didn't take a whole suitcase of stuff to do them. They were utilizing all the things around you.
Right.
It's based on old-fashioned ideas and old-fashioned songs and games. And you know, there are some really good magnetic games which are out on the market now, which they're specifically meant to be for traveling so that you don't lose all the little pieces underneath the airline seat or underneath the car seat, which is really frustrating. But things like tic-tac-toe, Othello, Connect, all of those games are now available in magnetic form.
They're particularly great before that because when your child really has a favorite game and it's that big board game, you don't want to take that board game on an airplane or in the car, it's too big. But the great thing is now they're miniaturized, and so your child can take something that they're good at and they really love to play with them on a trip.
Not every game that you play, though, has to have a pencil and paper involved in it. A lot of the best games to play are mental games. And I'm sure that every family at one time or another has had to come up. Sometimes you have to invent your own game as you're traveling along, whether it's accumulating letters of the alphabet from billboards or adding numbers up from license plates. There are just a whole lot of games. Some of them involve songs, some of them involve your cassette player, but we've really tried to list a number of ideas for parents so that they have a resource, a ready resource, an arsenal.
Exactly.
We also have a bunch in there that you can Xerox and copy and trace and whatever you'd like to take with you so that it's right in the book. Some of them are really fun because you can take a map, for example, of your trip or a bingo card that we've made up, and you can laminate it. Many of the copier stores and the photo stores now do that. It's very cheap. And once you have that, you can use that for 15 different games. You just have the one card and one of those magical little markers. Kids love to do that because you draw as you go along, and you can follow the map as you're going so that you know where you're going on a map, and then look outside and match it. Then you just erase it when you're done with it.
But yeah,
is that one of them?
That's one of the photocopy ready ones. There's also a wonderful one here for making a passport. This would have been just
one of our favorite things.
My daughter's, she made her own and didn't think of it, but you had some even better ideas here.
This is great.
I think it doesn't, you can make a passport, and it doesn't mean necessarily that you're traveling outside of the United States, that you're going to a foreign country. You can have a passport whether you're going to the lake for a vacation.
Sure.
I think that it has a couple of purposes. Number one, it helps the family get ready for the trip. I mean, it's building the anticipation. You know, a vacation doesn't just start the minute you leave the house and leave town. It really begins much earlier as the whole family is getting ready for a vacation, planning, thinking about not only what they're going to take clothing-wise, but what they're going to take for their backpack, for their games and activities that they want to have with them. And in getting ready and building anticipation, you want to do things like putting up a map on the kitchen wall and sort of tracing where you're going to drive if it's a driving trip, or where you will be flying if you're in an airplane. Pointing out the landmarks that you're likely to see, getting everybody enthused about what is coming up. And one of the things that can happen as well is that you can help your children make some passports. Now, the second value in that is that once made, it's kind of handy to have that little slip of paper, that little booklet that your child has made tucked away in a pocket. It has information that could be very valuable, like name and address and telephone numbers, emergency numbers, etc., just in case somebody loses sight of mom and dad and is, lost momentarily. You've got your passport with all the identification numbers.
The other thing we have in there that's similar thought in terms of making something that you take is all different kinds of journals. I think we have 8 different ones. And when you normally think of journals that kids keep in a trip or diaries, you always think of a child sitting down and sort of being made to write a little paragraph about what you saw today and what you did. And that may be okay for some older children, but a lot of younger children may not want to do that. If they do, it's a great way to do it. But if you don't, there are other ways to keep journals, and we have some in there that are just photo journals, where you have a little camera for your child and they can just take pictures of whatever they like.
And I love the postcard one you
And the
suggested.
postcard one is
That's
so
such a
great.
good idea.
Actually,
Well, once again, it's in building anticipation for the trip. You know, we suggest that you buy the oak tag, or what's the other word?
cardboard, paper, all that.
It's
kind,
that, yeah, tag board, exactly. And cut it up 4 by 6, 3.5 by 5, whatever size pictures you plan on having developed. And then there are all these instant places, this 1 hour photo developing place. I mean, they're all over the country. So if you're out on the road on a trip, you can take in a roll of film, get it developed. If you've already cut up your oak tag and have a glue stick with you, you just put the glue on the back of the picture, slap the oak tag on it, and you've got a very solid piece of material that will go through the mails easily. If you then take a magic marker and draw your line down the middle, you can have a place for the address on one side and your message on the other. And then if you're really thinking ahead, you will have bought your
Stamps.
postage
I always buy
card.
them before I go.
Postage
Always.
stamps, exactly.
totally prepared.
Well, how many times hasn't it happened to you?
Oh,
And it
yeah.
certainly has to
Cannot
me.
find them.
I have my thank you note or whatever already written, or my postcard that I want to send to somebody, and there's not a stamp around, and certainly not one in my purse, and I'm so frustrated. So
We have lots of lists in there of all those kind of things that you need, including a first aid kit with, I think, about 25 different things you can put in there.
Exactly, and I loved your backpack for each child, and I love the comment you said about they pack it themselves, but they have to be able to carry it themselves.
Well, it's a great rule because
Responsibility.
yeah, and you
Exactly.
have a child that really insists on taking that teddy bear among all the other things that they want to take. Well, that's fine if it'll fit and if he wants to carry it. There's no problem with it, but you have to be able to carry it. We also suggest, and our children have done it for years, is that the children pack for themselves. If you start off with a list of basic things so they don't forget underwear, you know, and shoes, which you'll probably need, if they have other things that they want to take, they should be able to pack it themselves and do it. And don't try to talk your child into wearing something he never wore at home, because he's not going to wear it on the trip. You know, it doesn't work that way. And when they have the control over really packing for themselves, they're more likely to take care of it and to really wear what they
And
took.
what a great skill to have, too.
Yeah,
it's-
I don't
it's
think
really-
we've packed a suitcase in years, either one of us.
I haven't, I know.
no, it's just it's a good goal. Not that particularly small children need a lot of supervision, but as they get older, it's I think it's a skill that they'll be glad you made them acquire.
The other kind of packing we have are all the backpacks. I think we have 4 or 6 different ones that you take from the ones that you need for the car, and we always suggest that kids have their own. You don't want to start sharing things like Walkmans and little games, because that's probably going to be a problem. And it's nice for them to have the things that are theirs that they can do with as they like. We have an end of the day backpack, which is really wonderful, because if you're going to go, especially when you go to a hotel and you get there and there's sort of nothing to do but watch television, if you have your own backpack with familiar things and special things, like bubble bath for the bathtub that night, or a special videotape that your child likes, or a little toy or a game, little things like that that are make that evening time a treat, so that you don't feel like they can just sit around or just have to go to sleep.
You have so many wonderful ideas and lots of input from all kinds of people. And you live in New York and you live in Los Angeles. How did you ever put it all together?
Well, first of all, we know a lot of people.
Well, Annie and I have now quite a history. You know, this is the 7th book that we've written.
I know, as a librarian, I know
Yes.
that well. The books are very popular. This morning at our library, there was none in.
Oh.
Is that
They were
right?
all- we own them all,
Well-
and they were all checked out except Halloween. That was still there.
Not too many people thinking about Halloween. But I think, Nan, that first of all, Annie lives in Los Angeles, I live in New York, our illustrator lives in New Hampshire. So it does sound like an improbable combination. But we are able to get together at the critical times in planning the book and in accumulating our research, but we do things separately as well. And because of Federal Express and because of fax machines and because of computers, we are able to make these projects work. And since 1987, we have come out with 1 book a year, which
This is our 7th book, if you can believe it.
you know, and all of them
I know
have,
that.
it's sort of the same genre. All of the books are sort of in a series because they're meant for parents, and yet they're very child-oriented. And I think that children as well, older children, enjoy reading these books to get the ideas or to look at ideas that we're writing about. None of the things that we suggest ever require or should require a lot of money to do. I mean, we're very consistent in saying to parents, use creativity, use ideas, don't spend a lot of money. Number one, it gives the wrong idea, wrong impression, the wrong value system to your children if you're only relying on buying expensive things to make things happen. So the first book that we started, in 1987 was on giving children's birthdays. And
Still, I think the most popular one at the library, at
yes,
least.
yes.
The birthday one, and we did a second one called the Penny Whistle
Birthday
Party
book,
book, which
there's
is
really
even more.
two books full of these theme ideas. And the point behind it is that a birthday is a very important day in a child's life. I mean, it only comes around once a year, but it's something that a child focuses on. And if you have taken the time to organize around a theme, and a theme makes it all very easy. The activities, the decoration, the food all fall into place because you have a central idea to organize around. And we give you some good ideas in the book, but often we act as a catalyst for people to come up with their own ideas, which is the way we wanted it to be. And the same thing is true with the Traveling with Kids book. I mean, we're there with some good ideas about how other people have spent time in cars and how they occupy their kids, etc. And I think you get your own ideas from reading this book.
All the Penny Whistle books on the side and in margins of each one of them, there are 7 now, have stories and tips and anecdotes from people that we've interviewed and talked to all over the country. We get lots of letters from the other books we've done, and we interview people, teachers, friends. For the Penny Whistle Sick in Bed book, we had a pediatrician and other doctors that we talked to. So we're very familiar with it, with a lot of people, and talk to them about it. And what you find in the margins are the most wonderful little ideas and thoughts, aren't they? And tips
they're
and
just
things you
fun
wouldn't
to
think
read,
of.
even if you're not
Yeah.
going on vacation.
Right.
You really did laugh and
And it's
cry with a lot of people along the way.
I started to say, that the point behind it is that the birthday is, that day is very important in a child's life, and so don't ignore it, because it really is, it's an opportunity that you don't want to miss. But I think that the same thing is true about family vacations. As your children grow up, they tend to remember their birthday parties and the family vacations. Those are really highlights in the year. And, most of our life is sort of mundane, really. I mean, we get up, we eat, we
It's
do the
routine,
homework.
Yeah.
I mean, it's routine.
And for the kids, it's full of stresses too. And mom and dad, mom always has to get the telephone, and the kids have homework to do, and dad either comes late or mom comes late, whatever it is. And the vacation time is really the only time where you don't have to deal with any of that stuff.
Exactly. The
And
phone
you
isn't ringing. The parents don't have their work responsibility.
can be flexible, and you can maybe
You're in a
do
different
things you
zone.
wouldn't. Right,
I'm
yeah.
surprised that my kids have known to appreciate that now too, that they're old enough to verbalize and
have.
think back what
Yeah.
they've really enjoyed about our vacations.
Exactly.
And it's that we're all together.
Exactly.
And we're not all running different directions. We're
It's
doing
true.
things together.
Yeah. And they remember it, and they talk about it. Much as the birthday parties, we always say, if you ask a child about their birthday, they say, well, Christmas is after my birthday, and Easter is before my birthday. Everything is sort of around that.
Revolves
And
around
it's the same thing about trips, They remember, they talk back, they remember the time we went here, and remember when this funny thing happened, or even something that is unexpected. Those are the things that they remember.
Even some of those traumatic things, when you can laugh
Yes,
about
that's
them
okay.
later,
You can
are
laugh
all
later.
part of the family
It's not so bad.
experience.
Right.
Exactly. And there are going to be traumatic things that happen, and there are going to be the best laid plans that have to get changed at the last minute, because that's life, and certainly life outside of your normal routine. And when you're dependent on an airline schedule, for instance, sometimes you lose control. I mean, the airline can't fly where you're thinking that you need to go. So you do have to have some flexibility built into all of this. But I think our thesis is that if you do your planning well ahead of time, knowing that you may have to be flexible and that you may have to make some changes, what you're doing is giving yourself a little insurance about the success of the trip.
A quote from your book: "Be prepared for the unexpected."
Exactly.
I wrote that down because I think that's real key in traveling.
Well, it's also important with kids because it lets you change things at the last minute so that it fits their mood and their desires, you know.
And
if
the weather and all kinds of
everything.
things.
And if something
Right.
isn't working, supposing you're planning to go to this one, I don't know, museums always come to mind because I like them, and my kids do, but you go there and it's closed, or you go there and half the galleries are closed and there's only one thing to do, and suddenly you're left with a lot of time. Well, there's always something else that you can do, even if you're only playing outside, you know, or having a race with someone, or going to somewhere unexpected. When we were little, my dad once put us in the car, and I said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "Wherever you want." And he gave us a map, and he said, "Just tell me where to make the turns, and we'll go wherever you want." And we spent almost a whole day doing that. Make
Did
a
you
right,
get
left
home?
here. We got home somehow, but it was the most exciting day. I mean, it's many years later that I still remember it, you know, because we had the control of just saying, let's
Exactly.
just try this, and there was no fear involved of the unexpected. What's the worst that could happen? We'll get lost, and we'll find our way back, you know. It was really fun.
Sound like you had great parents to,
I
to
did
do
have great
that.
parents, but any parent can be a great parent. It just takes a little thought and a little planning, and considering your children's desires and their interests and the kind of things they love.
And one way we found at home to plan is my son loves to call those 800 numbers
Yeah.
for the things in the almanac, all the different states we're going to be in, and
great.
you know, and then they get mail, which
That's
is even the
exactly
best
right.
part.
Addressed to them.
You know, and at first we thought, oh, this is a nice little activity for the kids, but we found they had all kinds of wonderful coupons, even for places we'd
Yeah.
already had reservations at, that saved us money.
Kids love getting mail, and you are so
Introduce
smart.
things
Yeah,
that-
exactly.
Most people don't think about that, but
Exactly.
it's absolutely true.
And right, and you can come to the library and get those numbers right out of the almanac.
Right.
And also at the library, we've got videos and books and things to help prepare too. I think that kids have more of appreciation for some of the things that aren't as easy to appreciate right at first glance.
Well,
if
the
they've
other
done some
thing with
reading
that,
ahead
and the
of time.
library is so perfect for this, is when you're going to really a place you've never been before. Not just to visit grandma or to go to a destination resort, but to visit a city, whether it's in this country or somewhere else, and you go to the library first and you get pictures, which we've always done, of the places. And then when you get there, your children are familiar with what they're seeing. You know, they look and they say, wow, there it is. You know, I remember that. That is the, or whatever it is. And especially for little kids, because to see something in a photograph in a book at the library and then to go and see it in life is an experience they don't normally see. You know, they're used to everything being on television, so don't relate it to life. But it's a wonderful thing to do to prepare them before any trip like that.
Well, again, along the lines of the preparation, it really does pay off not only to have your kids, your teenagers, or you know, pre-teenagers make the calls and get a hold of a lot of information ahead of time, but if you take the time to call ahead to the place that you're going to stay to get some information, you might find out some really valuable information. For instance, you might want to know, if you have small children, if they have a babysitting service or babysitters, and if the babysitters are bonded. You may want to know, if you're going to be in a hotel, where you are, and if there are balconies or sliding doors or things that, you know, with toddlers you really don't want to have to confront.
You should check that with bar, the little mini bar in your hotel room. We showed up once and left the kids there and went to dinner because they were really tired, and came back and the mini bar was empty, except for the liquor, because they thought it was a gift for them. So they just figured they'd eat it all up. And we learned from that to always call ahead when they were young. And actually sometimes we'd ask them to just empty it. Just empty the bar, and we would put our own things in there so they could eat the things that we actually had some control over what they were going to eat.
But speaking of food,
I'm glad.
Yeah.
the restaurants vary so tremendously, and you know, we've all been in all different kinds of restaurants, but if you are traveling with your children, you may not want the more formal, expensive restaurants. And it is important, by calling ahead you can find out if there are children's menus or if they're geared up to handle kids. Taking a family into a restaurant that is not geared for children is usually not a pleasurable experience for anybody.
You or the other diners.
Right.
No, it's really
So
true.
find out, you know, what the meal situation is, and also find out what recreation things there are. I mean, is there a swimming pool, for instance? That turns out to be key on a lot of these
Well,
trips.
you were saying on your
Exactly.
trip that you found that there was one at this place in Death Valley, and it makes a big difference,
difference.
because after a long day of traveling or sightseeing, that's a place
Renews
you can
everyone.
rewind.
Really
Exactly.
renews
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, or for teenagers, there are all kinds of video rooms and ping pong and pool and all of that. and playgrounds where you can really run.
And you also, bringing up food too, is you also talk about having some along. And I found that from my years that I made some bad mistakes not having food along when the airline got delayed, or the food didn't get on.
It's terrible.
Or we're just driving and there just plain isn't any place to eat. And having food along, and you've got some great recipes and things that travel well.
It's so easy to take a little plastic baggie full of just little snacks for kids so that
Plastic
they don't
baggies
get
are
hungry.
good for lots of things.
They're wonderful.
You recommend that here. Ziplocs especially.
Right.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to rely on any stuff that you really don't want them to have, like too much sugar that gets their energy rates really up, or too much salt, which means they have to drink and then you have to stop a lot. I mean, you have much more control over what they're eating, and then you don't have to worry about them being hungry. Even when you get into a restaurant and everybody's having appetizers and everything else, and your child really doesn't want to go through all that, you can have your little crackers or snacks, and it works great.
We've got just a couple minutes left. Do you want to just, maybe we could run over just a few real key things you'd like to have stay with us here when we're looking at a family vacation?
Well, the planning, I mean, let's just can't enforce that idea too much, because just know what you're in for, or what types of things are going to likely occur, you know, as you're on your trip, as you're going to and from, and once you're there. And make the calls ahead of time, and get the backpacks packed, and make sure that each person has his or her own backpack. And I think you're going to go a long way toward ensuring the success of the trip just by following those rules.
We always believe that you have to sort of remind yourself that this is supposed to be fun, that this is where everybody's going to smile and have a good time. It's not a time to argue a lot about a lot of things, and it's a time to be flexible and to really sort of lay back and just try things and really enjoy yourself, because these are the times that you remember.
It's a family trip, a family vacation, and don't lose sight of the fact that, you know, families can have a lot of fun together, and it really does depend on your focusing on your children and making sure that they're having a good time, and that the vacation really can center around them. Everybody will have a good time if you do that, and
experiencing things together. They
Together.
really are. You talk
Exactly.
about the family memory bank, and I think there's nothing more fun at holidays.
That's right.
And all of those times is to sit and reminisce. It's the one thing you share as a family that you
Exactly.
don't share with anyone else.
that's right.
Don't
So-
underestimate it. It is yours and your children's alone, and it's something that stays with you for a long time.
Exactly.
And then your children will take their
and
children.
they will share with each other, and
That's great.
that's very true. Well, I also take along your penny whistle traveling with kids book when you go,
Absolutely.
because when you're at the end of your rope, the knot is here to hang on to.
Plenty of things to do in there, right?
And you can't go wrong having this with you. I had it with me this time too, and the kids were having a lot of fun with it too. So
Good.
we're going to plan ahead and be prepared and expect the unexpected.
Right.
Have our penny
And
whistle
smile.
traveling with kids, and just have a fun vacation, maybe the best ever with our kids.
Good.
We hope so.
Good practical advice for all families traveling together. Thank you, Meredith Brokaw, Annie Gilbar, and Nan Nystrom-Hilk. Thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.